loses out, which is the worst thing in the world.
Thank you, Lord Grabiner.
Jesse Norman.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman, and apologies for being late, Lord Grabiner, to the session. You've said that Mr. Mallet did not escalate a particular issue relating to the fixing to an appropriate person, and for that you think he should be criticised. That's in your report. You're saying yes?
Yes.
Thanks. So you've reviewed all the information. You've judged that he should be criticised on the grounds of the behaviour that he's taken.
That's right.
Can I just ask another question, which is when you've included in the report several recordings, did you listen to the recordings yourself, or did you just read the transcripts?
No, I read the transcripts.
Right. So you didn't. So you wouldn't have been aware of any nuances in the call that, unless they were included in the transcripts.
No, and I think these transcripts were provided, for example, to Mr. Mallet and to any other relevant witness who was party to it, and there was never any debate about what was in the transcripts. They speak for themselves.
No, sure, but there might have been a debate of the way in which they could be interpreted.
Is there a particular point you want me to focus upon?
Yeah, no, there is. That's right. Thanks for raising it. So the one I want to look at is the phone call on the 3rd of October 2011. And you'll recall that that's a telephone call between Mr. Mallet and a trader, with Mr. O'Connor listening in on the call. And the trader's very concerned about the activities of brokers and banks around the 4 p.m. fix, and is trying to raise these concerns with Mr. Mallet. Have you got it in front of you?
Would you just bear with me for a second?
Yes,
this is paragraph 56.
In your report, yeah, let me just check.
The whole of
paragraph
the exchange.
56, that's absolutely right.
The whole of the exchange is set out.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. So let's just look at that for a second. So that's a report, that's a call that's been provoked by a trader. A trader said, I want to talk to you, Mr. Mallet, and they've convened a call about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the trader's obviously got something they're worried about.
Yeah.
And they're talking about what that might be. And the trader says, well, these 4 o'clock fixings in sterling are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and he worries about these things, and then Mallet just says yes, and then he goes into a bit more detail about the nature of the money and that's washing around, and then he says, not being washed around, it's just gone from just to create brokerage. And Mallet says, okay, draw you in to create brokerage. Also, some of these banks want to build a book. Okay, so building a book is a flag for potentially nervous-making behaviour, is it not, Mr. Grabiner? Lord Grabiner?
Yeah, well, this of course is about brokers, which I wasn't concerned with, brokers. If there was an issue here about brokers, that would have been something that the FCA would have investigated, and from memory, there's nothing in the FCA final terms of their decision that deals with this issue, but this was all drawn to the FCA's attention.
No, absolutely. So the broker side of it is on the FCA, and we're really focusing on the bank side of it,
yes.
I suppose. But the trader's worried about building a book that gets bigger and bigger. Mallet asks him, is it in sterling? He says, yes, cable, which is the sterling dollar exchange rate, as you know. It's spun around a lot, and Mallet keeps over-speaking, keeps essentially interrupting, talking over him. And that's in the transcript. And then he says, and Mallet says, what troubles me, it's an interesting word, troubles me, is your accusation that there could actually be some Trader says, well, not accusation is a strong word, but he's worried. He's raising this in a specific call with Mr. Mallet about it. And he says, it's being exaggerated, the trader says. And then Mallet says, well, that's market manipulation, isn't it? Trader says, yeah, absolutely. That's market manipulation. So traders convened a meeting, a call, on the phone, speaking to Mallet, okay, and he's raising a worry about market manipulation. Mallet identifies it, and the trader says, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so then Mallet goes on, tries to go into the name of the broker, or slightly heads him off, naming a broker, says, you don't have to understand this, and of course the trader then takes the cue, says, no, definitely not. So that's prevented the trader from putting into the name of the public record, or the record of the recording, who the brokers.
That's not how I interpret that.
Just let's
might be. Well, he says absolutely. You don't have to understand that. You don't have to answer this. But do you suspect of the 2 brokers you name, one is more? And he goes, no, definitely, no, not.
He backs off.
Sorry.
He backs off.
He backs off. That's right. And so the phrase "you don't have to understand this" feels like a bit of an encouragement, don't have to answer this, but or could be interpreted as such as that. Now, so then they're going on, and then the trader says that the brokers are facilitating it for the banks. To which Mallet says, yeah, okay. As opposed to the brokers, it's the banks that try to manipulate the market through the brokers. Mallet says, it's not that, they're just trying to build a book. So the trader's quite specific about what falls into the behaviour he's worried about and what doesn't fall into it. He's just talking about book building, the potential for market manipulation. So then Mallet says, your point is some people are doing it without actually an interest. Without actually, and trader says without an interest, i.e. they're doing it speculatively, worried, bearing on the question of market manipulation. Mallet says, okay, I understand. Right, well, trader says, well, it could get a bit, at some stage it could get a bit. And then Mallet overspeaks again, cuts across him. So we don't hear what it could get a bit. What he must mean is worrying, illegal, kind of word comes to mind there. Mallet says, overspeaking, can you keep us in touch? Trader says, yes, I will do. Okay, so that's the transcript we've got in front of us at the moment. Now, the question is, first question is, do you think the trader's concerns warranted a further investigation by Mr. Mallet?
Well, the trader starts with what looks to Mr. Mallet, is my interpretation of this conversation, as being a sort of preliminary discussion with a view to criticising or expressing suspicion of the behaviour of two brokers unnamed.
Yes.
And Mr. Mallet, if I may say so, very properly says to him, well, that's market manipulation, isn't it?
Yes.
And the trader says, yes. And then Mr. Mallet says, well, you don't have to answer this, but do you suspect one is, and then the trader runs away from it.
One is more, he says, one is more.
One is more, yes.
Yes,
but
in other words, more guilty, more responsible, more...
This being an occasion when the trader overspeaks Mallet, you'll see, and the trader immediately interrupts. He says, no, 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 definitely not, no, no. And so Mr. Mallet is asking him, and then he says, basically, I am not prepared to go down the road that you are suggesting may be an interpretation of what I'm trying to tell you.
Can I make a point of fact, just for a second? It doesn't actually overspeak. Where there's overspeaking, it's marked in the transcript. He tails off. He says, do you think, or the two brokers you name, one is more? He then pauses, and at that point the trader says, no, I'm not going to name one, pick out one as being, they're each as bad as the other, is the inference from that. I'm not going to name one as being worse than the other.
I'm not sure about that. I mean,
he's named the two of them, he's convened the meeting, he's raised the issue.
Yeah.
Guy says, which is more, pause, no. That suggests they're equal in the respect that he's worried about them.
But it's a very curious, if the trader had finished his communication, what he was saying were the following words, ... it's being exaggerated, shall we put ... And then Mallet speaks. I haven't listened to the transcript, but it looks to me as if Mallet intervenes and makes the observation about market manipulation. But whether he's overspeaking or not with respect is, in a sense, neither here nor there.
Well, going through it now, don't you think it might have been a good idea to listen to the transcript? Lord Grabiner?
Well, let me just finish the question first of all. When he suggests to the trader that may be what he's coming to, and then the trader backs off, as I put it a moment ago.
Well, the trader's first said yes, he's agreed that it's market manipulation.
Indeed, but then he backs off. But then a critical bit of the conversation, in my view, is that at the end of the conversation, Mallet says to him, can you keep us in touch? And he says, yeah, I will do, yeah. Over the next few weeks, if you hear more of this, and James O'Connor is listening in, so either me or James, yeah, I'll just give you a heads up. Now, I asked questions about this, and he never came back. Now, whether he should have gone ahead and made some further inquiries is a separate matter, but he never came back. And the impression I got from that exchange, and it's It's not particularly clear, but the impression I got from the exchange was that it wasn't very clear what the trader was trying to communicate, but that when it was actually put to him that he was actually making a very serious allegation, he wasn't prepared to go through with it. And then when invited to come back on a later occasion, he failed to do so. So whether there's a separate criticism to be made there of Mr. Mallet, I'm not sure. It may be that he formed the view that there was nothing in the conversation in any event.
Okay, so I want to bring in the Chairman's question in a second, if I may, Lord Grabiner, but actually, if I may say, I think you've slightly misstated the case, because the trader is not in any doubt that there is market manipulation. The trader says, let's finish the thought. The trader says, yep, absolutely. What the trader backs off, as you put it, was not the claim about market manipulation, it was which of the two brokers one is more. So the trader isn't prepared to say one is more, whatever the thing may be, guilty, exposed, whoever it might be, but he is perfectly clear that there is market manipulation. There's no doubt about that from the transcript. So then the question is, and in fact he says it again, it's the banks, if you like, try to manipulate the market through the brokers, says Mallet, and then the trader says not that, they're just trying to build a book. So he thinks it's market manipulation that comes not by manipulating through the brokers, but by some other form of market manipulation. So there's a clear pattern there. Now, Chairman, did you want to bring in a question about...
Well, wait a second.
Do you think...
Sorry, hold on a second. No, sorry, look, have I got that right?
Yeah, I'd like to make this point, if I may, and that is that the word manipulation is ambiguous, and it's very, very important to understand this. You can have perfectly lawful manipulation. It's a very odd word because it's got inappropriate connotations. But you might manipulate something perfectly lawfully. For example, you want to achieve a certain result in the marketplace, and you do it without more. Alternatively, you could achieve...
Without more what, sorry?
Well, suppose, for example, I wanted to sell a lot of shares in the market, but I don't want to tell the market that I'm selling 5% of the stock of some company. What I might do, and this could be described as manipulation, is to dribble out the shares over a period of time. So the market never discovers what I'm up to, and the result is that the market price is never moved. Now, you could say that the trader was there manipulating the market. That's one kind of description of the word manipulation.
I don't think I've ever heard of that being described as manipulation.
Well,
Lord Grabiner, I don't know whether anybody listening to this would consider it.
Lord Grabiner, can I just point out a potentially relevant fact? Just for a second,
Can I just finish my point?
Yes, of course.
My point is that you could use the word manipulation in a perfectly lawful context, and you can also use the word in an illicit context. So that if, for example, the manipulation was the result of collusive behaviour, that would be a different usage of the word manipulation. So that the mere presence of the word manipulation doesn't actually tell you necessarily which of the categories we're talking about. That's the only point I want to make.
Okay, I don't know if it's relevant, but there are four members of this committee who've worked in the financial markets, none of whom would recognise the description you've given of the dribbling out of shares as market manipulation on this committee. But there may be such a definition of manipulation. You're a legal expert, not me, and I don't demur from that. But it's perfectly clear that that can't be the case here, can it? Because you don't call the chief foreign exchange dealer at the bank to complain about market legal manipulation. You call them to complain about market manipulation in the sense it's normally understood. That is dodgy behaviour. And that's what this guy is worried about, isn't it? It's perfectly obvious. And I'm surprised you don't agree with me, Lord Grabiner. Do you want to review that again and just come to your final view?
Well, the reason I don't agree with you is because it's blatantly obvious that the trader was not prepared to make the allegation that you're saying he must have had in his mind. I don't accept that your interpretation is what the trader did have in his mind.
The difficulty is it's not it's not. There's no interpretation here. The phrase is, well, that's market manipulation, isn't it? Yep, absolutely. That's completely unequivocal. It's market manipulation. Yep, absolutely. He's made it clear. Now, the trader, I asked you the question, did the trader's concern warrant further investigation by Mr. Mallet? And you then said somehow that it was the fact that the trader didn't then follow up with all the hurly-burly of the foreign exchange markets that discharged any obligation on Mr. Mallet. That seems to me to be a clear non sequitur. Regardless of whether the man followed up, he's made an accusation of market manipulation. It's in the record. It's discussed, and the question is, why shouldn't he have been under an obligation to follow that up? He's the senior man responsible. And I'm asking you, why isn't that the case?
Mr. Mallett's evidence to me was that this was a garbled conversation, that he did not understand that that was what was being said to him, and that he tried to get to the bottom of the conversation, and that was as far as he got. And I agree with him, because I think that that is a very fair interpretation of this exchange.
Okay, that's very helpful. We disagree on the interpretation, and we can leave it to those reading it and listening to this, reading this transcript of this conversation and listening to this to decide what they think. So let's have a follow question, which is, do you think there was any onus on Mr. Mallet to have contacted the trader to follow up? Harry, I noticed you had an issue about market manipulation. You were going to get back to me. Has there been any further information you've come across? Do you think there's any obligation on him about that?
Well, he didn't think so, and I accepted his evidence.
So you don't think so?
I told you, I accepted his evidence. I think that you're
no, but
interpreting...
sorry, we're clear.
I believe... Let me finish, please. You just keep interrupting me. It's not going to get us very far. I want to make my point. You persist in wrongly interpreting the word manipulation, in my opinion. I heard Mr. Mallett's evidence on this, and I questioned him very closely about this conversation, and his evidence to me was that it was a garbled conversation. He did not believe he was being told about wrongful or illegal behaviour, and I believed and accepted his evidence. You may have reached some different conclusion, but you weren't there, I was.
So you accepted that evidence despite the clear sentence here that it was market manipulation.
You persist in wrongfully interpreting the word manipulation. I do not accept the spin that you're putting upon that word. You are wrong.
Mr. Lord Grabiner, or Grabiner, you're, I may say so, slightly over extending yourself. I'm raising a question about interpretation of some language which has a perfectly plain market meaning. The view that I've reached is not idiosyncratic to me. It is shared by other members of this committee, all of whom have operated in financial markets, if I may say so, unlike yourself. It's in the context of a call that was made to reflect a concern by the trader. Therefore, it occurs in a context which is specifically raising an issue of unhappy, unfortunate, or possibly illegal behaviour. Those are all considerations that militate in favour of my interpretation of this, and I'm afraid, on the evidence we've got in front of us, your interpretation of it. You've already agreed that you did not listen to the recording, so you're not at any further advantage to us except that you accept the evidence that's been given by Mr. Mallet, and we haven't had the chance to listen to Mr. Mallet. We're just forming judgment based on the evidence we've got. And I asked you the question, should Mr. Mallet have contacted the trader to follow up? And you haven't yet responded to that question.
I have actually responded to it a couple of times. In my judgment, having questioned Mr. Mallet about this in considerable detail, which you haven't,
yes,
and trying to get the context from him of the conversation and his impression of what it was that the other party to the conversation was trying to tell him, he formed the view that it was a garbled conversation and that the spin that you're seeking to put upon what the trader was saying to him is deeply offensive and probably illegal, and that he should have gone back and questioned him further. My own view... Allow me to finish my answer. My own view is that his interpretation of that conversation was an honest one when I asked him about this, and if there be any doubt about this, he was entitled to the benefit of the doubt.
So you don't think he should have contacted the trader to follow up?
I believed his evidence.
Sorry, you're incapable of reaching the clear statement yes or no. You accepted evidence, that means you concurred with his view that he should not have had to contact the trader to follow up.
I accepted his evidence that he did not believe that he was being told something that he should do something about.
Well, let the record be clear that you're not prepared to give us a yes or no answer to a
Well,
question.
That's your point. That's not my point.
Okay.
That's you're entitled to your opinion.
As
I think I'm entitled to mine as well.
Most definitely. And I would certainly not accuse you of spin, Lord Grabiner. Can I ask you a question then about, you've said you don't think that the traders, you said that Mr. Mallett's evidence was the trader's explanation was unclear, and I do not think they understood it. Did you ask Mr. Mallet what he did understand from the trader's explanation?
I'm sure that I did, and I haven't got the transcript available to me. But in response to that question, the substance of his answer to me was that it was a garbled conversation, and that when he did put the key question to the person with whom he was speaking, he got a back-off response.
Would you be able to send us a note of the transcript that you do have so that we can have his response to you so that we know what he actually said to you?
I'm sure I could.
That would be very kind of you. So Mr. Mallet, in the conversation, seems to have inferred there was some kind of wrongdoing from the conversation, doesn't he? He says, you don't have to answer that, market manipulation. He's obviously worried that something is being done here. The banks, he's worried that there is manipulation going on. You don't have to answer that. That's not something, by the way, that you say in the context of someone who's doing something according to your definition of legal manipulation, Lord Grabiner. It's only illegal manipulation in which you'd worry about not having to answer something. Isn't that right?
Can you repeat the question?
So he says that's.
Well, okay,
Mallet says,
but it was very clear.
Mallet says, well, that's market manipulation, isn't it? The trader says, yep, absolutely. Mallet says, you don't have to answer this, but do you suspect, it's an interesting word, of the two brokers you name, one is more? He says, no. So if it's legal manipulation, why is Mallet cautioning him about not having to answer things?
No, he's not cautioning him. What he's saying to him is, if this is what you're telling me, tell me. To which the answer is, no, it's not. No, I'm not saying that. He repeats the word no about 6 times.
He says, do you suspect of the two brokers you name, one is more? So he's trying to identify which one might be more at risk in some way. But it's clear, isn't it, Lord Grabiner, that he thinks that this is potentially wrongdoing in some kind of form. He's worried about it. He wants him to get back in touch with him. If you think something's illegal, legal manipulation, you don't ask someone to get back to you, you don't worry about it. He thinks it's an illegal or possibly a form of wrongdoing, doesn't he?
Mr. Mallet thought this was a garbled conversation, and I accepted his evidence.
Okay. I'm not sure you're doing yourself any credit, Lord Grabiner, by not being more direct about the answers to this.
I don't think I could be more direct than I have.
Okay, so you don't think that Mr. Mallet inferred wrongdoing?
The repetition of the question is not going to get a different answer.
No, but I think it's very clear. Okay, so let's ask another question. Mr. Mallet doesn't actually say at any point in the discussion that he doesn't understand the explanation that's being given. He doesn't say, I'm sorry, Jim, I don't understand what you're saying, does he?
Well, the record speaks for it. I have gone to the trouble of inserting the whole of this exchange in this report for your edification, amongst others. So you've seen it for yourself. That is the extent of the conversation.
I think it's extremely admirable for you to put this in, because it is the very information that we need to be able to ask questions in a perfectly proper public way of you, Lord Grabiner, and I applaud you for doing that. But I think it is true, and I haven't seen anywhere in this, and I don't think colleagues have seen anywhere in this, where Mr. Mallet tells the trader that he does not understand the explanation being given. Now, if you have seen somewhere where he does say, I don't understand the information that I'm being given, or the explanation, could you point me to it?
Well, I will provide you with the relevant extracts from the transcript of evidence when I questioned Mr. Mallet about this very conversation, and you can make up your own mind about it.
Yes, but that doesn't bear on this conversation between the trader and Mallet, does it?
We know the extent of that conversation because I've set it all out in the report.
But I just want you to confirm to me that there's nothing in here where it seems to me, maybe I've misunderstood it.
No, you can read it for yourself. Well, anybody can. So it's a public document.
So you are prepared to agree with me that there's no point at which Mr. Mallet says that he does not understand the explanation?
Well, you read it for yourself. I'm not going to start interpreting his observations in this document. You make up your own mind as to what's in there. What he said there is there. My conclusions are there based upon the evidence that he gave me. And as I say, I will provide you with the relevant transcript extracts. And then you can make up your own judicial mind on the subject.
Lord Grabiner, I don't have a judicial mind. I leave that.
I know that. That's the reason I made the point.
Gosh.
Sorry, can you just explain what you meant by that? Lord Grabiner?
What I mean is that there is simply no point in your trying to have a debate with me about my conclusion in relation to a particular conversation without having seen Mr. Mallet and without having participated in the process that I was involved in. You simply pick out a little nugget and tell me what you think it means. And all I'm respectfully suggesting to you is that you may actually be wrong, and I may actually be right.
Lord Grabiner, I'm not remotely suggesting that I may be right. I'm just asking you about evidence you have placed in the public record in a parliamentary process of which you are party, holding you under a parliamentary process in a way that I think is perfectly properly understood and widely shared, accountable. And you're having great difficulty giving straight answers to perfectly straight questions.
That is a very offensive observation, and I reject it. I am having no difficulty at all, and I have not been evasive in my answers. And it's very offensive for you to suggest that.
Well, I absolutely don't mean any offence at all, but when I asked you the question, does Mr. Mallet anywhere tell the trader that he hasn't understood the explanation, I haven't understood that you were able to say either yes or no to that question.
Well, why don't you read it for yourself and make your own judgment? What I think he was saying is neither here nor there.
Okay, that's fine. Let me just conclude by saying this. If just imagine that the impossible or the unlikely were the case, and that in fact there was a worry about illegal manipulation here, and that was the reason why the trader made the call to Mr. Mallet, and that was illegal manipulation that the trader was referring to when he talked about its market manipulation. Yep, absolutely. Just let's assume that, let's just say, however counterfactually, that is the explanation. It would then be the case, wouldn't it, that if, as I think you've effectively conceded, Mr. Mallet doesn't anywhere say that he doesn't understand the explanation being given, it would seem that would cast doubt on the information he gave you, that he subsequently thinks that what the trader said was garbled. It doesn't come across as garbled, but that's Mr. Mallet's view. If all that were the case, do you think that Mr. Mallet ought to be the subject of criticism for failing to investigate further and failing to raise this allegation of market manipulation with officials inside the bank?
If Mr. Mallet formed the judgment that he was being told about some illegal business being done in the marketplace, then in my view, he stands to be criticised, yes. But I do not believe he did interpret the conversation in that way, which is why I have reached the conclusion I reached.
I'm very grateful. Thank you very much, Lord Grabiner.
When LIBOR was being